Welcome back, everyone. We have an update to a legal case that we have been following for years here on the channel. It is a miscarriage of justice at every level, and our system failed this young man. And we have an update from President Trump's Department of Justice that we wanted to talk about today. This case has been gaining a lot of steam, partially, of course, because of my coverage of it over the years and just exposing how insane it is. And it got a little bit worse this week, but I think it can be better if people are aware of what happened. That's why I am making this video. So for folks who don't know, Patrick Tate, Adamiak, I believe I'm saying that correctly, was a petty officer in the United States Navy. And in 2021, when all this started, very likely he was the subject of a political witch hunt for a new rule that was being proposed at the time, which unfortunately the Supreme Court just made a ruling on that we'll get to here in a second, saying that certain things, frames and receivers, that weren't covered under previous definitions of what a firearm was, essentially were now firearms. That was a Biden administration decision or a rule in the Department of Justice claiming that these items were now firearms. That case has gone all the way up to the Supreme Court. It was ruled on a few days ago. And due to that decision at the Supreme Court, the Department of Justice under President Trump just released a letter that you guys are probably seeing on your screen here. And this is in response to an appeal by Tate and his attorneys in this case trying to get these charges thrown out. And that's one of the goals that we want to do here in today's video. We're going to work this through every angle we can. We're going to try to get some funds raised for his legal team to get these charges dismissed, because the man should not have been convicted. Additionally, I want to draw attention to it, both through the Department of Justice doing this. This is not what we want under the Second Amendment, under this Department of Justice. This is not what we voted for. And I want to make sure the folks at the White House and the Department of Justice understand what's happening at the lower level where this case is actually happening. As of when I'm recording this, last week I made a video about a suppressor ruling that essentially the Department of Justice was just following what the Biden Department of Justice was doing, trying to remove the protections of the Second Amendment from suppressors. And within 48 hours of that video going up, myself and Jared over at Guns and Gadgets both did videos on it. We were both, from what I understand anyway, contacted by people either in the administration or the Department of Justice, told that they were unaware of that, and they actually changed their position on the case within 48 hours. So hopefully that is what I'm trying to do today, and that will only happen if you guys share this video. So again, Tate, 2021, was building up his collection to try to fund, when he got out of the military, to try to fund a museum that he planned on opening. So he had a lot of military memorabilia, and he was buying and selling parts kits that are not firearms at all, never have been regulated as firearms, on different websites to include Gunbroker. A confidential informant from the ATF was sent out to essentially try to buy a unlawful machine gun. He tried to buy them from several different people, and what ended up happening, again, I have 2 full videos with all the details on this. I'm just trying to highlight it for the new folks here on the channel since then, which there are hundreds of thousands of you that are new here since the old videos came out. So essentially what happened was he purchased a parts kit for a PPSH on Gunbroker, and it was imported as a single cut receiver. So I realize this is going to seem pedantic to a lot of people out there, but unfortunately, this is why this man is in prison right now, is because of this ruling. So historically, up until, I actually don't know the date, so I don't want to say it to get wrong, but up until recent years, when a machine gun was demilled overseas so that way it could be imported, the receiver had a single cut on it. Now the ATF has since changed it so that they want 3 cuts on it, and I believe they want them angled. I should be rolling in a photo here on your screen, and basically when the kit that Tate bought came in, it was a single cut receiver. It's probably been sold many times actually over the years. These kits are sold all the time, either in private sales or through different websites that you can pick them up, surplus stores. So essentially he's sold a single cut receiver that could be welded together and then parts added to create a PPSH. For somebody, in this case, in order to do that, you would have to be a licensed dealer in order to do so. However, the kits themselves are not regulated in any way. We're not regulated in any way. And the ATF, the Department of Justice under President Biden, charged him with selling machine guns for that very kit. Now, mind you, he didn't actually have a machine gun. That is very important for the folks watching at home if you guys aren't really experts in firearms. He did not have a machine gun. It was simply a collection of steel parts that was sold that could possibly be turned into a machine gun if you had like a factory, the ability to weld, the ability to set headspace, all of those sorts of things that would go into building a machine gun that Tate did not have. Nobody even alleged he had. And then additionally, the one that got a lot of attention was the rocket-propelled grenade that he sold. So that in no way was a rocket-propelled grenade. It was demilled. You could buy them right now on multiple sites on the internet. They're completely legal to own. They are not regulated in any way. It has a hole in it, which is to be demilled. Also, the trigger was removed. Also, the firing pin was removed, and it says inert across the top. It could not be any more clear. In fact, he actually flew with this item when he was PCS'd in the military from the West Coast out to Virginia, and you know, the TSA had no problem with it flying because it was clearly not a rocket-propelled grenade. However, as we will see, they went ahead and did some work to it to get it to fire something. Not a rocket-propelled grenade, but what the reason for the story, or the timeliness of the story, is because of that letter that was put out by the Department of Justice on the appeal. So I want to talk about that here for a second. So earlier this week, the Supreme Court ruled on the Vanderstock versus Bondi decision, which of course was the framed and receiver rule from Polymer 80, essentially saying that they could expand the definition, the ATF could, through their own rules rather than law changes of what a frame and what a receiver is and what a firearm is. And that was ruled on this week. Unfortunately, I'll probably do a video on that later this week. However, as it relates to this decision, a United States attorney put out a letter pending Tate's case, and basically you'll see there in the first paragraph, they referenced a Bondi versus Vanderstock case, talking about an unregistered machine gun, grenade launchers, and anti-tank missile launchers that Tate possessed are machine guns and destructive devices under U.S. code. First, a weapon is an artifact noun characterized by the intended function. So that is what the ruling from the Supreme Court actually said. That's why they're quoting it in that way. Second, at least some weapons parts kit can be quote unquote readily converted to expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. So again, they're going back to the Supreme Court ruling on this case, which was a 7-2 ruling, unfortunately. And again, mind you, this was not law. This was not a Supreme Court ruling at the time Tate was convicted. They're applying this standard to a case that is being appealed, if that makes sense. So again, they're not even alleging that at the time this happened, this was the law of the land. They're just applying it now to the appeal. And it goes on to say, here the evidence at trial established that a PPSH 41 is a machine gun because it is a weapon which is designed to shoot or can be readily restored to shoot automatically more than one shot without manually reloading by a single function of the trigger. And the paragraph continues on, as you guys can see. But for this case, one thing that's important to remember is that it can't be readily restored simply because most people don't have access to the types of tools that would be required to readily restore the kit as it was sold. I don't have a welder. Most of you guys probably don't have a welder. I'm sure some of you do. Most of you don't have the tools to set the headspace on the gun. Most of you out there do not have the ability to rivet the receiver together. All of these things are highly specialized tools. And in fact, in this case, in some of these instances of what Tate was charged with, the ATF actually went through and tried to, or attempted to actually convert and use some of the parts that were presented as evidence of possession. However, in the PPSH case, they didn't even try to do that. And my guess is the reason why is that it would be so difficult. They didn't want to go through the effort. So instead they focused on things that were easier for them to do in their weapons making laboratory. So that is the letter. We're going to talk about the two things he was convicted of here in just a second. And again, that readily restored or easy to restore or readily assembled really is kind of the key point of the case. They're saying that because they're acknowledging he did not have the items he was convicted of, but that they could be readily assembled or readily restored to do so. Most of you guys are well aware that you can go down to the local hardware store right now, buy a nail and buy a pipe, and you will have a easily convertible 12-gauge shotgun. So point of that is these are just pieces of metal that he had, and if that is the new standard of being sentenced to 20 years in jail, a lot of people would be in danger in this case. So just, again, share this video everywhere, let people know of this injustice, comment down below, make the video blow up. So we're gonna briefly talk about the two items that he was convicted of. The first one is going to be the grenade launcher, the M79. So I actually went into really, really long detail in my first video. You guys should see the thumbnail here. If you guys are looking for all the old videos that document this in great length, just type in Mr. Guns and Gear Navy Sailor into YouTube and it will pop right up. You guys will see it. But essentially, the M79 is a Vietnam era grenade launcher. You can purchase them. You have to go the components separately. You have to go down to your local FFL to purchase the receiver. It is not a NFA item unless it is combined with the actual barrel itself. That has been the ruling from the Department of Justice for decades at this point. Many people have had them. As long as they're not assembled, then it would not constitute a destructive device. However, if you ever wanted to assemble it, you would have to file the ATF tax stamp form, go through an enhanced background check, submit your fingerprints, photo, etc., and pay the $200 tax stamp. So he did not do that, and the items were stored separately. Again, for decades now, this has been the standard of how it would be legal to do. They were actually in locked cabinets, and in the report here, it says, as they were received by the ATF, they were not assembled. So it says that right in the actual evidence report that I'm quoting from, and probably rolling in photos of here as well. A lot of people have said that he had a M203 grenade launcher, which is half true. If you actually look at the evidence sheet here that came straight from the Department of Justice, they say the way it was configured, it was not a destructive device. They come out right there and say it, so they didn't actually charge him for that 203, they charged him for the M79. And again, they are the ones who put it together and readily restored it. He did not do that. Again, I go into detail in the earlier video on that, but I want to focus on the RPG because that's the one that is getting all the attention online because it is so sensational in terms of a headline. They say that he had an anti-tank missile launcher. He did not. He had an RPG-7 that was completely demilled. The way that those are commonly demilled is that a hole is drilled into the tube itself. And the reason they do that is they make it structurally unsound. So that way, typically you'd put your RPG warhead in the end, then you have a firing pin and a firing pin mechanism, as well as a trigger assembly. None of those were in the one that Tate had. And then it would be fired, causing the explosion to happen in the tube, propelling the RPG forward. The reason they put that hole in there is that there's no way it can be restored once they do that because the pressures that are required for that RPG are so extreme. If anybody ever tried to do that, it would blow up in your face and it would kill you. So the ATF knew that, and when they went back to their weapons lab, which they have, I believe it's in West Virginia, to prove that it could be fired, they never fired an RPG round from it, ever. What they did is they fired a 7.62 by 39 round through it. Now you may be thinking, RPG doesn't fire a 7.62 by 39 round. You are correct, but many of you guys who are in the United States Army or have been in the U.S. Army or U.S. Marine Corps, you guys may know that, for example, when we train on the AT-4, before you ever fire the actual AT-4 explosive munition, you train over and over again on a 9mm training insert. So basically an insert just goes straight into the AT-4 that fires 9mm, and it allows you to get down the handling characteristics, how to aim, how to fire, all of those sorts of things in training, and it's just a way to save money for the military. The Soviets had the exact same thing. They had a system that could be put into an RPG and it would fire 7.62 by 39. And the reason the Department of Justice under President Biden, again, went down that road to charge him in this case is because they knew there's no way they could fire the missile or else the person firing it would die. So they modified it to have this training insert that nobody is even alleging that Tate had. He didn't have it. And they didn't even allege that. They said they modified it to put the training device in there, added the trigger components. There was a steel bar in the inert copy that Tate had, preventing trigger components from going in there. However, the ATF removed that, put in actual trigger components from an RPG-7 that, again, Tate did not have. The ATF had to bring those in and do that. Additionally, they installed a firing pin. They acknowledge in their photos, in their evidence file that I should be rolling in here on your screen, that there was no firing pin mechanism in it when they received it. They did not allege that he had it. They openly say in court they are the ones who installed it in there. They also say they are the ones who installed the sleeve that fires the 7.62 by 39, and they fired it, and they used that in court, saying that it was a fully functional destructive device. If that isn't insane to you, I don't know what to tell you. Additionally, Tate and his legal team, they hired a gentleman named Dan O'Kelly, who was a former ATF agent who has testified in a number of different cases. And basically, he has testified, in this case, was going to testify on the definition of what a firearm is, what a receiver is, and he was going to testify that all of these items were not firearms and not destructive devices. And unfortunately, the prosecutor in the case was convinced by the U.S. attorney, and I believe I have the quote here somewhere. If I do, I will roll it in on your screen, but essentially said that there was no need to confuse the jury with what the definition of a firearm and or receiver is. That is huge. That is a huge thing that should have happened, because that's the crux of the case. They're saying he had these items, but in no way was the defense team able to present the fact that these items were not what the Department of Justice said they were. I realize that might be confusing or a little bit too in the weeds for a lot of you guys, but that is what they did. And right now, again, he did not have any of the items they said he had in the configuration they said they were in, and he's doing 20 years in jail. President Trump could pardon him right now. Additionally, the Department of Justice attorneys who are working this case could take the exact opposite stance that they just took in this case if they knew the details behind it. My guess is they probably don't know the details, the current ones in there, and they're just repeating the lies of the last administration. So that's a pretty succinct summary of the weapons that are involved and what he's being charged with. However, the political prosecution side of this can't be ignored, because it is the entire reason, in my opinion, that this happened. So if you look at the actual timeline of the events, Tate was arrested on April 7th, 2022. 40 agents, FBI, ATF, Department of Homeland Security, as well as a local bomb squad, raided his house. Again, despite knowing that he didn't have any illegal machine guns, based on the evidence that they had seen so far in their investigation. But anyway, they did. They made headlines across the country about this guy who was in Virginia and had explosives, anti-tank missiles, all of these sorts of things, unregistered machine guns, and was selling them. There's newspaper articles out there. You can still read it. They still exist, and they are all lies, complete lies. So that makes the news, makes the headlines, national headlines everywhere, that people are just selling these illegal firearms out there, unregulated. And then coincidentally, 4 days later, the new rule is announced by the White House, the Biden White House. They hold a press conference, talk about how frames and receivers can be readily converted, and pieces of plastic like polymer 80s, for example, can be readily converted, and they should be regulated as firearms. Again, there was no law passed to say that. I just want to be very clear. There was no law passed to say that at all. The Department of Justice under President Biden just made up a new rule, and that's what happened. Within 4 days of him being arrested, all of a sudden they announced the new rule, and then several months later, the rule went into effect. So that's also important, because even the Biden Department of Justice acknowledges their rule was not in effect when Tate was arrested. So obviously it's not a law, so there's that. But even if it was a rule, it was not in effect when he was arrested and charged with these crimes. So there's no way that he would have ever known that he was violating a rule that wasn't a rule until the future, if that makes sense. So the case just absolutely is horrible. It's a victimless crime, but again, in my opinion, it's not even a crime, but let's pretend it was. No victims of any kind. And again, this is a person with a squeaky clean background who was serving the United States Navy and doing so honorably at the time. One note I just want to point out before closing the video out, it's a personal one, that I couldn't talk about before, but now I can, because the timeline has changed. So when I made my first video on this topic, his Navy chain of command put out instructions to everyone in his unit that they were prohibited from talking to me. True story. And I didn't put that in my earlier videos because I didn't want to get him in trouble. I didn't want to get any members of his unit in trouble. However, one thing I will tell you, they definitely talked to me. They definitely did, and good for them for standing up for one of their fellow sailors. And they talked to me, they got information to me, and they actually relayed some information to Tate as well and his legal team from me back and forth. So good on them. Good on those sailors who did the right thing, trying to help their fellow sailor who is being framed by the United States government. Shame on the command for doing that. Trash. You guys are trash. Those of you who are behind that, trash. You should be ashamed. And if you're still in the service, I hope someone outs you as the people who did that, because you deserve to be outed. Anyway, getting off my soapbox. That's all I got for you guys. Just what you can do. Again, share the video everywhere. That's the biggest thing we can do. If you guys want to contribute to Tate's legal fund, there will be a link down below to his Give, Send, Go. He has ongoing legal fees right now. Again, he's already done over a year in prison on a 20-year sentence, and he still has appeals to file. I would prefer, personally, that he never file another appeal. I would prefer that tomorrow he is pardoned by President Trump, and or the Department of Justice completely changes their decision on his appeal and grants his appeal. But right now, that's not where we're at, and both of those things can happen. Either one of them would be welcome news, I'm sure. So share the video over, let everyone know that's what you guys want to see. If you guys want to contribute to his legal fund, again, link down below for those who want to do that. If you like this type of video, unfortunately, we do them far too often here on the channel. This, again, is my third one on this particular topic in this particular case. So definitely hit the subscribe button both on YouTube and on Rumble. And then if you guys are following or subscribed and you're not seeing 2 to 4 videos a week here on the channel, you're being censored by an algorithm. There's an easy way to get around that. You can sign up for my email at the website here on your screen. This will get you put on 2 different lists. The first one is just a monthly email that goes out once a month, and it has all the videos since the previous month's email went out, so that way there's no big tech giant censoring your eyes from my content, because it goes straight from me into your inbox. It'll also get you put on the daily deals email. That email goes out every day, as the name indicates, and it has usually 8 to 10 of the best deals that we find around the internet on legal firearms, legal optics, legal ammo, all of those sorts of things. If it's in the email on a given day, it's the cheapest I know of anywhere on the internet for that item. So hopefully it saves you guys some time and also saves you some money, because I've already done the price comparisons for you. And lastly, we have an SMS list that you guys can sign up for. It goes out every day. Not really. Probably, if I had to guess, 4 or 5 days a week. Not every day, but only when there's either a really good deal that just went out and is probably going to sell out. I like to get that in your text inbox so that way you guys can see it and take advantage of it. And or it has a link to the latest video that just dropped. Once again, circumventing the algorithm and making sure that you guys can actually see my content when you want to. So that's it, guys. Thank you all for watching. I truly appreciate it. And get active. Let's get this guy out of jail. We'll see you in the next video.